Welcome, everyone, to today's T3 Network of Networks launch series capstone event. For many of you, you've been a part of the process since May 25th when we started this network of networks and officially moving forward. And now, after charter reviews and feedback and conversations with many of you and a few hundred participants, we are now at our capstone event to really kick off the future of this work in the T3 network. So for today's webinar, per usual, feel free to introduce yourself through the chat and continue to use the chat throughout today's webinar to ask any questions. We'll be happy to stop and unmute your line so you can ask questions verbally. We'll have time at the end to also have time for questions. But again, if you want them answered in real time, feel free to be very active through that chat. And today's webinar will be recorded. We will share the recording and the PowerPoint and next steps in our follow-up email right after the webinar later today. And we hope that you can share that out with your networks and continue to encourage people to join the T3 network, because we are only as good of a network and as strong of a network as the participants in it. With that said, I will turn things over to the Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, Jason Tishko.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you kicking us off, and thank you all for spending a little bit of your afternoon with us today during the summer. We know it's a lot to ask in these summer months during the recovery to get you to spend some time live and in person. But thank you very much for being generous with your time and joining us for today's launch event. This recording will be made available widely, so feel free to share it with any of your peers who may not have been able to attend today due to conflicts or vacation, and know that we'll be distributing it far and wide. So thank you so much for joining us, and please do introduce yourself in the chat, as we like a very active chat and for you to be an engaged participant in this meeting. So we encourage you to speak up early and often, and feel free to post comments and questions or just engage with your peers. So if we're looking at today's agenda, we should be moving through this in expeditious fashion. We're going to start with a very brief recap of where we are with the launch of the T3 Network of Networks, and give you an update on where we are with the charter review. What we're going to do then is celebrate the ratification of our first data infrastructure networks and their charters, and we're going to hear from each of the project leads who's been facilitating that ratification process. We're going to close with a very brief update on where things stand with the launch of the T3 Network Resource Hub, and how to set your expectations on just how available that resource is going to be to you and what it's going to provide you. And then we're going to finish up with just some closing remarks and where you can get more information and how you can continue to be part of this next phase of T3. So we promise to keep each of these segments brief, and if we're effective with our time and efficient, we will have reserve some time for some open Q&A. So if we move to the next slide, what I want to do is just reiterate our mission and vision. We always want to start with this as part of T3. This is why we come together as a network. This is our shared belief and vision, and why we're collaborating together in this space and furtherance of all of our work. But we take it upon the T3 takes as its mission the global digital transformation of the talent marketplace, and to do that by promoting data interoperability and harmonization across a wide variety of stakeholders, including employers in the business community, education and training providers, as well as credentialing providers, as well as government in the military, and all of the technology partners these end-use stakeholders use in order to gather and share data. So that's the goal. And why are we doing this? It's to achieve three big things. It's to get that digital transformation right, such that all learning counts, and that learning is rendered as data that is fully transactionable across all of our different platforms, to make skills like currency, and like currency to render skills as data that is not only fully transactionable across our platforms, but fully translatable. And then finally, and most importantly, to make sure that learners and workers are empowered with their data, that their data is always accessible to them and is working for them in furtherance of continuing education and employment opportunities. This is the vision that we had set out with many years ago now, well over 3 years ago, when we built the first roadmap around how to promote this data interoperability. That work was, of course, supported by Lumina Foundation, who was able to assemble that first coalition with the chamber to put that roadmap together. And then we've enjoyed the participation of many funders, including Walmart, Google.org, Microsoft Philanthropies, Gates Foundation, and many others who made phase 2 possible, where we spent a good 2 years pursuing 8 to 10 projects at any given point in time, trying to implement that roadmap to make sure the work has been done in a way that's use case driven, that is vendor neutral, and that is in furtherance of these goals. So we're really excited to be embarking on this next phase to double down on this vision and mission, to say, our goals remain the same. It is this digital transformation organized around these 3 big goals. And we're excited that we've not only made some meaningful progress over the last couple of years by virtue of all the collaboration, activities, and leadership that's been provided by the T3 members themselves, but that we're now in a position to pursue the next 9 months of work as we embark on this new pilot phase, which we internally refer to as phase 3, but more publicly call it the launch of the network of networks, our more sustainable governance structure for how we're going to manage these data infrastructure communities going forward. So let's take stock of where we're at. If we go to the next slide. If you recall, on May 25th, that is when we began the work of the network of networks. We held an event to cover much of what I just previously covered, but to begin to lay out kind of what's in our immediate future in terms of launching this network of networks, and how is it going to look and feel a little bit different than it has the previous couple of years. And we laid out a process where, instead of having 8 to 10 projects operating under the T3 umbrella, that we were going to consolidate wherever possible around 4 core data infrastructure networks. And these data infrastructure networks were going to be their own communities of practice, where they're under the general T3 charter and guiding principles. They were going to form their community group and establish governance over it, so that they know how to make decisions together in this space. But the magic of T3 is not about any one of these community groups, these networks coming together to promote governance and interoperability. It's about their ability to work across networks, across community groups. So we consolidated the work down to the core 4 that have been kind of the heart and soul of what T3 has been focused on. And our goal in this next phase is to establish a little bit more permanence and sustainability to the work that they do. Right now, we have been agile and how we've pursued this work, and we've benefited greatly from that agility. But now we're, like I like to say, we're pouring a little bit of concrete on it and saying, let's solidify what works, and let's test a new model for the future. And let's make iterations along the way. But our goal is to make sure that T3 becomes a more permanent and sustainable community that is able to help manage or help enable and empower these community groups to really manage themselves, but to be promoting cross-fertilization wherever possible across them, because we believe that these codependencies are very real. And if T3 can help maintain open lines of communication across them, we think that will go a long way towards accelerating this digital transformation of the talent marketplace. So we kicked that process off on May 25th, and we've spent the better part of June and the beginning of July moving through a charter review and ratification process for the 4 core data infrastructure networks. Here are the 4 that have been meeting: the Open Competency Frameworks Collaborative Network, the Data and Technology Standards Network, the Learning and Employment Records Network, and the Jobs and Workforce Data Network. They have all met at least twice. They have reviewed their charters, and I'm excited to say that they have completed ratification by the time they concluded their meetings. So all 4 networks have completed those ratifications, and as of today, have been formally accepted by T3, and their work and your work begins. So as of today, we are officially launched. If we were here in person, we would hold up a toast, but we'll have to save that for later in the year when we could all get back together again. And when that will happen will probably be sometime in late fall. So the work of the networks, that is the core, the heart and soul. They are going to be engaging on their own timelines per their own charters. But we will be bringing the full network together whenever possible, so we can make sure we can see what all the different community groups are doing. We could promote communication across them. We could address use cases that touch on multiple community groups. So we are going to be doing those full T3 network meetings, but we will we will pick them carefully based upon progress made and needs of the respective networks themselves. But we do plan to have that convening in late fall. We'll see what our options are in terms of virtual versus in person or some kind of hybrid, but do stay tuned. We will be bringing the full network together before the end of the year. In the meantime, we are going to be supporting each of the 4 core data networks in the work that they're going to be pursuing as their community groups. And then by March 2022, that is when we'll conclude this initial pilot phase. The work will have been completed, and we are going to then make improvements to what we've learned. So think of this as a low obligation, low risk engagement under this new model that uses charters to govern these data infrastructure networks, because we want to give it a try. We want to learn from this experience. We need to learn from you all and your experience for your networks, so we can make it better. And then we'll launch the second half of this project with those iterations made to see if we can get the model exactly where we need it to be, so it's adding value to all of our work and is in service to those goals that we covered earlier. So that is kind of where we are in the timeline. Today is an exciting milestone met, and we're really eager to get all the networks up and running and fully supported, and then to get an update from them in late fall. But we're asking for about 9 months of your time and contributions, and experience it fully and come back with your honest assessment about how it's working for you now. What did we change that's working well? What did we change that's not working? But this is about kicking the tires to make sure we get these charters approximately right. We know it's never easy to get something right on the first try. We've done our utmost to plan and prepare for this 9 months, but we fully expect to learn and to adapt based upon your experience. So thank you for getting us to this point. If we go to the next slide, I think I just want to reaffirm that the 4 network charters have been publicly reviewed. They've been updated and ratified by consensus per our new guidelines. The official business of the T3 network of networks begins as of today, and that these 3 networks are going to be operating under their own charters, but there are some rules of the road that govern all of them. And those are our T3 network guidelines, which are available to you and are referenced in those charters. So for those of you who want to get into the nuts and bolts of how all of this works, we do have those agreed upon guidelines for how we operate data infrastructure networks and how decisions are made across the network. But now we have the charters, which have been negotiated by their community members and ratified by them, and that are operating across a shared set of rules established under T3. So it's a little bit of concrete, like we mentioned. I believe Josh has provided the link to the guidelines. We encourage you to look there. We're going to be testing all of this out together. So go to the next slide. This should give you a preview of kind of how we're organized. We're keeping it light. So we will be establishing a T3 Network Advisory Board. Now that the networks have been formed, each of them are going to be going through a process to appoint chairs or co-chairs, one of which will be represented, or at least one representative from each of the networks will be on that advisory board, as well as some at-large members who will be selected later. So now that the networks are up and running, they will be identifying their chairs, and we will be working with those project leads for each of the networks to more fully form the T3 Network Advisory Board, which we hope to announce a little bit later this year. So we're going to be putting those pieces in place. Other data infrastructure networks can emerge. We are still maintaining some level of agility within T3. So while we're starting with the core 4, and that's plenty to bite off, we are open to adding additional data infrastructure networks as needed. But we want within this ecosystem to provide work groups and others to form that could eventually spin off and become their own more long-term permanent data infrastructure network as we begin to explore data interoperability across the talent marketplace. But here's our big 4 we're placing a bet on, but we will grow as needed based upon the needs of the community itself and what we learn together. We are going to be establishing some issue or use case work groups. Many of the networks themselves will be operating their own work groups or subcommittees, but we will have sponsored issue or use case work groups come together. We're in discussion with several partners, many of you who are on the phone with us today, around the various aspects of the work around learning and employment records. So we're trying to figure out how to capture that in the T3 universe, and how to make sure we are giving them a space and a platform to do their work, to access the network members, to share their findings, and to solicit input and feedback when needed. but to also begin to flush out and dive into a variety of use cases and issues that are going to have many implications for one or more of our data infrastructure networks. So even if you're not a direct participant or community member of a network, it doesn't mean that you couldn't be part of one of these work groups that are really just trying to get laser focused on a particular issue or use case, that we could then be your bridge to help understand how that use case or issue touches one or more of the core data infrastructure network. So we're going to be, as the networks get underway, we're going to work with them to form the advisory board, and we're also going to engage them to begin exploring the first set of issue or use case work groups that will be informing the work of those networks. So that's where we are right now, and where we're going to put our focus for the rest of today's meeting is squarely in the middle. So hopefully we've covered kind of what, again, where did we come from, and what are we all about? What's our mission? What brings this network together? And we covered the timeline in terms of how far we've come this year and where we're going next. And for the bulk of the rest of the meeting, we're going to really turn things over to the project leads, who have been the ones who have been organizing their respective communities of practice to fully explore the charters, the work to be done, what work needs to continue from the previous phase, what new frontiers need to be explored together as a community, and where there's opportunities to promote additional synergies with the other data infrastructure networks that are out there. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is turn things over to the first of our project leads. We're going to go through all four. We're going to try to keep these presentations to approximately 10 minutes each. So don't worry, we won't be too long in the tooth, but we want to give you an update on what's happened over the past 4 to 6 weeks and where these networks landed as far as ratification goes that was just, as of today, accepted by the U.S. Chamber Foundation and T3. So to kick things off, I believe we're going to start with Jim Goodell, who is our project lead for the data and technology standards network. So Jim, if you are ready, I am prepared to pass the baton to you.
Thank you, Jason. The Data and Technology Standards Network. Yes, it was ratified. The charter was ratified, and the charter was established for a very specific purpose, and that is to be a catalyst for collaboration, for incubation and adoption of standards-based specifications and services that enable the learning and employment ecosystem. So we are kind of the Data and Technology Standards Network to support the mission of the broader T3. And to do that, we're going to be having our first meeting, I guess we can go to the next slide, on August 16th at 1 p.m. And there are some things that we need to do to kick off the network. The first is that we need to officially charter and establish our 2 standing working groups that were named in our network charter. And those 2 working groups, one is a steering work group on the market side to receive and understand the market signals. What the market is telling us are things that are needed for data and technology standards and for their incubation and adoption. And then there's a technical steering work group that we'll be launching. And those 2 work groups will be the standing work groups. And then as we discover those needs, we'll be launching other temporary work groups to address those needs. So that is our first order of business. And we'll also discuss in the first meeting our communications cadence and establishing our meeting cadence for the network. And if there's time, we'll start to explore some near-term opportunities for the network to become a valuable resource to the ecosystem. And with that, I will pass it on to Jeannie and Bob. I mean, Jeannie and Stuart, sorry.
That's okay, thank you, Jim. My colleague Stuart Sutton and I want to thank all of the T3 members who actively participated with the development of the ratified OCFC Network Charter. The input and participation was outstanding, so thank you. The mission of this network is to provide infrastructure enabling universal and equitable access to skills and competencies for a thriving learn and work ecosystem. We use competencies as an umbrella term for numerous commonly used terms such as knowledge, skills, capabilities, habits of mind, abilities, and so forth across communities of practice. It's also important to know that this work will build off infrastructure that was built last year, and that includes a competency search and retrieval service technology and the data ecosystem schema mapping tool that was developed as an MVP and was completed and is ready for mapping of data standards. As we jumpstart the 2021 goals by building off these technologies, if you haven't already seen the demo videos about them, we have very short informational videos that you can watch, and we'll make sure you have that information. And on the next slide, although the network is going to further develop technologies, we also know that the technologies need to be human-centered. We want to assure all of the members that this network is not just for technologists. We really need everyone who has an interest in better information about skills and competencies to join us. That includes advocates for open shared data and use of data standards. It's for people that have organizations that create, maintain, or share skills and competencies, and for users, consumers, as well as technologists. So join us, save the dates. We have set the bi-monthly overall network meeting cadence. And our first important task is going to be to select a chairperson for this network. So we also want to encourage anyone interested in taking a leadership role to submit their interest in moving this exciting work forward. And on the next slide, our first task of the network will be to develop the work plan and launch a requirements work group on skills and competencies. And this work group will begin by reviewing the status of the search and retrieval technologies and data ecosystem schema mapper work that was completed last year, identify use cases that build off of the previous general use cases, and help to begin documenting requirements for refining and scaling these technologies, as well as the general requirements that will lead to more technical types of documentation and things like the terms of use and policies for participating with the skill and competency search infrastructure. And I can pass it on to the next, go ahead and go on to the next slide. Pass it on to Phil.
Thank you, Jeannie. Well, thank you, everyone. As you've heard, the network charters, including the LERN, have been ratified. And you see a brief statement of the mission there. I just want to emphasize two things. One is the inclusive nature of participation. This won't work if it's all a collaborative group of very technically minded folks. We need a broad spectrum of folks in both policy and implementation and workforce and employers. We need the spectrum, including, of course, obviously the issuers, higher institutions, and trainers, et cetera. The goal here in terms of this particular network is really to put the learner at the center and have them be an equal party, an equal player with the issuers and the relying parties, so-called, in the trust framework. That is to say, employers or the organizations to whom individuals wish to send verifiable representations of their knowledge, skills, and abilities. Next slide. So we do have a first meeting date set for August 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern, that should be Eastern Daylight Time. And we will determine at that time what our cadence needs to be. I think that we will probably want to start with a monthly meeting for the first 2 or 3 perhaps, and then switch to bi-monthly thereafter. But that seems to me to be a community discussion to have. We also need to think about our priorities in terms of the actual work groups that need to be implemented. And those work groups include, well, let's put it this way. There is a scope for the LERN that involves cultivating an active community of practice, developing and sharing those practical implementation strategies, identifying barriers to adoptions and effective mitigation strategies to them, thinking about what are the guidelines, rights, and principles of all of the LER stakeholders, and also thinking something we haven't done too much about yet, which is what are the instrumentation opportunities for this network in terms of collecting data about its performance and its viability. The work groups we have before us to start with are specifically work groups that, as Jeannie mentioned in her presentation, that need to be formally chartered with a work group charter. But we will start with a learning and an LER adoption and implementation work group, a digital wallet work group, and an analytics work group. The digital wallet work group will clearly need to work in collaboration closely with other communities in the digital wallet space. And that's a point of emphasis I want to make in this LERN because of the cross nature of activities going on in so many parts of our community. T3 doesn't want to replicate those. They want to work in partnership with them. And Josh mentioned at the start of this, the collaboration with Digital Promise as effectively a cross-community work group, which is looking at the needs and requirements of frontline workers and what that means in terms of digital services in wallets and representation of their skills, et cetera, that makes it meaningful and useful to them. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it now over to Bob Sheets, who's going to describe the Jobs and Workforce Data Network. Bob?
Thanks, Phil. And first of all, let me thank all of you all who participated in the development and ratification of the charter for the Jobs and Workforce Data Network. As you can see in the mission, this is really the mission statement. I want to just highlight a few things about this network. Being an open global network, which we tried to emphasize in the charter, dedicated to improving the development and organization and sharing of standards-based job and workforce data. So jobs and also the workforce mean those who are carrying out the work for those job assignments. So the idea is to promote and improve the development and use of jobs and workforce data for creating better value for a wide variety of stakeholders listed there. And it's really focusing on, I want to emphasize, high impact use cases that have a line of sight or improvement in the performance of talent markets from both an efficiency and diversity, equity, inclusion perspective. And the last one is protecting privacy. I want to highlight one thing that came clear in our discussions about this charter was one major focus in terms of the set of use cases is employers developing and utilizing data on competency and skill requirements. So that is one area of use cases that will be at least one focus area. Also, this network is in promoting in the design and testing of applications, in utilizing standards to address the high impact use cases. And last of all, it was important to create some sort of an open global forum for coordinating and aligning related public and private initiatives. And one example in the United States context is the JetX initiative that some of you are participating in. So imagine this network is devoted to making sure creating an open forum for promoting the design and test of applications that utilize standards for addressing those use cases, as well as aligning and coordinating related public and private initiatives throughout the world. So that is the mission of this network. I can go to the next slide. Our first meeting is September 9th, 11 a.m. Eastern time in the United States. And we will start in terms of the priorities for that for the network starting then is to establish the standing work groups in the charter. There were 2 standing work groups. One is a stakeholder work group, which was really designed to actually identify those high impact use cases and related public and private initiatives, and also how to promote design and testing of applications, as well as a forum for talking about those, as well as the existing public and private initiatives. The idea is then that stakeholder work group will then work to identify issues for a second standing work group, a technical work group, which will deal with implications for data and technology standards in cooperation, of course, with the Data Technology Standards Network that Jim is coordinating, and also identify issues around data collaboration and use, how jobs and workforce data can be integrated and shared through some sort of data collaborative models, as well as issues around the use of competency and skill networks, frameworks. So again, that is the 2 standing work groups. The idea is then to establish a meeting schedule. Originally, it was for the standing for the stakeholder work group to meet first, then followed a month later or so by the technical work group to address issues identified through the stakeholder work group, because we wanted to have a broad, very diverse set of members of this network, both technical and non-technical, who can work together on key issues. The idea is to start, at least with the stakeholder work group, is laying out a starting point for identifying, developing use cases, and also was very important to the people into the charter was also identifying use cases, but also related metrics and how they relate to those bottom line issues, high impact issues with regard to talent markets. So again, focusing on developing use cases and metrics, and also how to best conduct forum for coordinating and aligning public and private initiatives, as well as any sort of demonstration projects that deal with the design and test of applications based upon standards relevant to those use cases. So anyway, that's where we would start with our first stakeholder work group meeting, and start with those 2 issues moving forward. Take it back to you, Jason.
Actually, I believe Josh is going to take this next part.
Oh, Josh, okay.
Yes, so as Jason was referring to earlier in the presentation, this is now that we've launched the 4 networks and the core infrastructure networks, and we're moving forward in this process, there are more opportunities to have leadership roles in the T3 network. And we want to be, we've always been open, but we want to be even more open to provide these opportunities as we continue to grow networks and work groups. And so in order to do so, we wanted to make sure we also provide transparency. And so as we're thinking about leadership in the network and getting more involved, if it's the advisory board, or if you're a network chair and want to volunteer for that, or if you want to be a work group chair, these are really the 5 characteristics that we're looking at for T3 network leadership. So for all of these, they're voluntary. You can opt in and put your name in the hat and see and be a part of the process. But know that this is what we're judging it based off of the actual commitment to the T3 network, the mission, vision, core values that are outlined in our guidelines. We want to make sure that we have a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our leadership, and that we start to expand in this process. That could be both ethnicity, race, gender, geographic location. All of those are being taken into consideration. Experience in your position in the issues. We want to make sure that those who are leading these areas have some experience in them, and if it's both in leadership or specific and esoteric to an issue, that's really important. Commitment to the leadership position. You will have help from the network facilitators, They are paid to help do with the minutes and getting the information documented and making sure the T3 Network Hub is up to date and it helping to advise on all of the work and the thought leadership. But we also do expect that future chairs and advisory committee members also bring a lot of thought leadership to how do we expand this T3 network. And then confidentiality and impartiality. Again, we're here as an open network. Everyone's welcome. We're trying to get the broadest, most diverse group of stakeholders all in the ring to have these conversations, solve these big challenges, and come up with solutions. And so we want to make sure we're doing that in a positive, transparent, and open way that benefits all and has the greatest impact. So we want to make sure in choosing those leadership positions that we keep that in mind as well. So this is something we will be posting on the T3 Network Hub, but we wanted to be very explicit and transparent about how we're weighing out future leadership opportunities. And so on the next slide, what I want to dive into is the quickest leadership opportunity that's coming up, and that's for the network chair's position. So again, for each network, you have a facilitator, and the facilitator we are the individuals who have given the overview of each of their networks, and they're there doing rolling up the sleeves, doing a lot of the hard work on the day-to-day process, and are experts in the field in this area. But they also want to have chairs that are helpful with the agenda and moving issues forward, bringing more people in. We want to keep expanding our ranks, not limiting them. And so these volunteer chair positions are an exciting opportunity because you are the thought leader. You're going to help run the meetings and be a part of these big discussions. And each one chair from each network will have an automatic position on the T3 Network Advisory Board when that is created in the upcoming months. And so there's a lot of opportunities here for volunteering to be a chair, and we really do want to make that more open to everyone and apparent. And so what you see on your screen right now is exactly taken from the T3 Network guidelines. This is what we're asking for the chair. So this is your role, and as you can see, it's a reasonable lift, but hopefully we try to make it as easy as possible to do that. And so I believe there's some questions in the chat. The chair position we are going to keep for the pilot period for the 8 to 9 months. So we'd like to get the right volunteer in there to help us serve there, and then we'll reanalyze and rethink that as the 9 months come up and bring that back up to each network individually. So that's for the chair position. And if we go to the next slide, I wanted to explain then, well, how do you put your name in the hat? And so for each network facilitator, if you're interested on being a volunteer chair for one of these 4 networks, and there could be one chair or there could be co-chairs, we want to hear from you. So if you're interested, please just send an email to your network facilitator with the network name and the chair and the subject line. And we are asking for a low lift, just either an attached bio or a link to your bio, but some way of understanding a little bit more about you and your expertise in this field. And if you want to share more, feel free to do so. But at a minimum, we just at least need your bio to know who you are and what you've done in the past. So that's what we're asking to do is again, reach out to your network facilitator and let them know you're interested. And really for each network, this is one of the first agenda items when they meet as a group. For most of you throughout August, and for Bob's network for the Jobs and Workforce data in September, is to actually move forward with confirming a chair. And so that's really it for the chair questions, the chair opportunities for each network. I wanted to ask Jason, did you have anything else to add for the leadership here?
No, there's lots of ways to be involved. This is, at the end of the day, it's your network, it's your communities of practice, and we want to make sure that there is every opportunity for us to kind of appreciate the diversity, as well as the leadership contribution of many individuals and organizations that make up T3. So we're trying to provide that in a more structured way. And we felt that having a chair or co-chairs for each of the data infrastructure network was the right move, and one that would actually then help promote network leadership within the forthcoming advisory board. So we want to give this a try. We want to see how it works. And then we could always iterate upon this approach later. But we do want to elevate more voices and more leadership across the T3 Innovation Network. And this is going to be our first take on that. So we encourage you to speak up if this is a role that you are interested in playing on behalf of your community. And we'll work with the network leads to establish a process to recognize those chairs. So just thank you for considering. And if you yourself don't think it's a good fit, but you know someone who might be well served in being in that position, or by all means, feel free to nominate them, to share information with them, or tell us who they are so we can go have a conversation with them.
And I do see that we have one hand up. Duncan, you have your hand up. I'm going to unmute the line and feel free to ask your question.
I think Duncan just put in the chat that it was a mistaken hand raise.
Oh, gotcha. Well, at this time, then I would like to open up to the group any questions on network chairs and some of these leadership opportunities. Please feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute you. And if you're looking for the raise your hand function, it's on your control panel, about three images to on the right hand side. So I do see a question from Alan and Brandon. We do not have a specific date scheduled for our next network call, but we do plan in the fall to have a network joining or a network-wide meeting similar to our former annual meetings here in the fall, to talk about where the networks are going, give those network-wide T3 network-wide updates and where and the path forward and the movements on that at that meeting. So we will have those opportunities. We will be holding those not on a monthly basis. Again, this next one will be in the fall, but coming after that, we'll do it on a normal cadence, and would like to hear from the members on how often we should do that, because we don't want to interfere with each individual network. There are some questions about emails for the facilitators. Again, following this webinar, I will be sharing out the recording, the PowerPoint, how to get involved, which will include the network facilitators' emails, so that you can, if you want to throw your name in the hat for a chair position, then we'd be happy to consider that. And I think some facilitators are already putting their emails in the chat, so that's great as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but is that information accessible on the T3 Network Hub?
It will be later today.
And you can always reach out to the Chamber Foundation staff to help navigate your way through T3. So never hesitate to reach out directly to anyone with the Chamber email, and we will help connect you to all the appropriate folks you're trying to reach.
Well, I'm not seeing any hands raised, and I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat. So I'll give it about one more minute, and then we'll move forward to our last few slides. Great. Well, Libby, I will take over the shared screen right now. What we're going to do now is walk through the updates to the T3 Network Hub, and this is how you're going to learn how to join these different networks and be a part of these portals. So I will walk you through that, and also would just like to note that we do have a 2-minute tutorial video. So after this call, that's something we will share out, and that's also something you can share with your networks on how to join. It's a quick 2 minutes and explains the functionality of it. So I'm sharing my screen now. And so again, the main hub is t3networkhub.org. So if you type that in, you'll fall right on this homepage here. This homepage is what you saw on May 25th when we launched the network, and we've made some additions and expansions from it, as we promised we would in advance of this Capstone event. So one thing I do want to note here is one very important part. There's the About section, again, just about the T3 network, who are the facilitators, how to reach them, the T3 guidelines are there. There's the Learn More. This is why do we have the T3 network? What's our mission, vision, and opportunities? And the really important part here is this Join button. So again, this Join button, we're asking all T3 network members, even if you're on the listserv, to join using that button. And what that does is it allows you to build an online profile, so that when you're joining networks, when you're leaving comments, when you're sharing resources in the future, it's all linked to your profile. We know who you are. others can contact you, and that we have, again, more of a collaborative hub. That was what this was always meant for, was to be more collaborative and to bring people together. So we are asking all T3 network members to join first. Just join the overall T3 network, and you'll see it's about 5 slides in the join process, and then you officially created your online profile. So that's the join button. That's what you have to do first. Once you join, then comes the opportunity then to join additional networks. You have to join and create an online profile or an online portfolio. Once you do that, then what becomes available to you then are these networks. If you recall in the past, these networks just had the names before, but now we actually have the functionality here to create portals within them. So each of the 4 founding networks have their own portal here. You can learn more by clicking that, and you'll see just the mission statement, who is the facilitator, and a link to the charter. It's just basic information. That's also a great resource to share out to people who are interested in joining different networks, because it's very limited information. And then if you do like that network and you're interested in it, we have a quick join button that allows you to join the network. And when you join that specific network, it's just 2 questions. Well, if you're going to agree to that network's charter, and you'll see there's a link to it that allows you to read the charter if you'd like to do so, and then that you agree to adhere to the meeting rules and communication protocols of the T3 network and our network guidelines. So it's just a 2-click process, and you officially join that network. So when you click on the join button, and I'll do that now, there is the you'll come into your portal. So this is my individual portal through my profile here. And as you can see, I've joined all 4 networks. So normally the 4 things that you see here, this part here, and here, these would not be here. When you create your online profile, all you see is the Q&A forum, the introductions, and getting back to the hub. But once you join the networks, and they start being listed here. And so for the, let me get out of the drawing here. So when you create your online profile, you only see these 3 boxes. You can ask any question you want to the whole T3 network. You can introduce yourself to the whole T3 network, or you can go back to that homepage, which is a public page that anyone can get to. And then again, in your online profile, here's where it's going to list each network you've joined. And these are links to get right into that network. So when I click on, let's see, the Job and Workforce Data Network, this is the actual portal. Once you join, you get into this portal. And so again, you'll have the basic information that was part of the learning function of this, which is the mission of it, who the chair is, who the facilitator is. And now you'll get functionality to start working within this network. So you'll see up here at the top here, there's a wiki right now. All of those are placeholders. There's no wiki for each network, but that's something that will be built out in the future. Going down on my left-hand side, there are meeting notes. So after each meeting, you'll see that each meeting note, each meeting and their date and notes will be posted in that section. So you can go back and see what decisions were made and what votes were taken. You can see who's members of this specific network. So again, that's why you have that online profile. Your picture, name, and organization will show up that you're a member of this network. And so they can private chat you. You can private chat 1 or more people or everyone in general. If you go to the right-hand side here, there's the opportunity to link right out to GitHub repos. Right now, that's again just a placeholder. There's nothing there, but the networks might have to build that out. I know the OCFC will be building out GitHub repos as well. So those are options. The group forum here, when you click on this is an area that will be for, again, just everyone who's in that network. You can talk to the entire network, or you can create issue-specific questions that everyone can see. So if you have a technical question or an advocacy question or one about governance, you can create different tiers of questions that people can then go into those sections and answer and have a full conversation. And then this way everyone can read them, and it will be very open. And then the last part is the events here. So the events, this is where you'll have the Zoom information. You'll know the dates and times. You can then say that you're going to attend, decline, or you might be attending, but that will all be available to you. And in this current phase, it's just the information. in version 2 of events that the Learning Economy Foundation will be adding to, they will be having a downloadable calendar invite, but that won't be ready for another month or so. And then finally, at the bottom here, again, the charter, everyone will be able to access their charter very quickly through the PDF option, and then to get back to that hub. And then one final or two final things real quick is right here is where you'll find members. So when you click on that section of it, you'll see who are the members of that network. And another exciting part here is these 4 buttons. If you click on this, this is how you can invite members that are already T3 network members. You can invite them to join this network. And again, this will be similar functionality for future work groups. Or you can share this group. You'll get a link. You can share this out with your network and ask more and more people to be a part of this larger network, and they can go through the same process. So I know it was a lot to share today. Again, we have a 2-minute demo video that goes through all of this much quicker than I did. And I do want to just make sure that I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the developers of this T3 Network Hub and its user-friendly side of it, the Learning Economy Foundation and the We Library platform. They really brought this to life and try to make it as simple and transparent as possible, with allowing people as much functionality and ability to communicate and collaborate and be able to share resources. So I do want to thank Duncan Cox, Chris Purifoy, and Jackson Smith that worked very diligently on this. And they will continue to develop this and have already agreed to help maintain and improve it based on T3 Network feedback. So if you have questions, concerns, things you'd like to see, they'd be happy to hear from you as well as Jason and myself. And we'll continue to grow out this hub to be the best resource and the one-stop shop for all of your needs. Now, I realize there's a lot in the chat here. Jason, I'm not sure if they have all been answered. Feel free to jump in if there are some questions, or you can throw it to me, or I think Duncan's on as well.
I think we've been addressing all of them via the chat, so I think we're in good shape.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
I will let Libby take back the screen share, and I will turn it back to you, Jason.
Okay, I just have a few kind of closing remarks to make for the formal presentation piece of this, and we've been very efficient with our time, so we're of course more than amenable to giving you some time back in your day, but can definitely open it up for a little bit more discussion should folks still have questions. But before we lose your attention, we wanted to really emphasize 3 critical steps that we're asking for as part of our call to action. We greatly appreciate everyone's participation over a month ago when we started the chartering process. We appreciate all of you who've taken time out of your summer to contribute towards improving and iterating upon those charters and getting them formally ratified. And now that we are officially launching all 4 core data infrastructure networks as part of this next phase of T3, our ask of you is that if you have not yet, please do join the T3 Innovation Network, and please do so through the T3 Network Resource Hub that Josh just walked you through, and that is linked there on the slide, just t3networkhub.org. Please do join. And when you do join, understand that you can join the T3 Innovation Network, which is how historically we've kind of managed folks' engagement. But now we have these 4 infrastructure networks, and you have the opportunity to not only join T3, but to specifically join one or more of these data infrastructure networks, which will allow you to get into the meat of what T3 is doing and how it's promoting data interoperability in these 4 domains. So we encourage you to not only join T3 for regular updates and to be invited to our plenary sessions, but we encourage you to get your hands dirty and dive in one of these infrastructure networks, work with your community of peers, identify the top priorities of the day, and then work collaboratively together as that community to solve them and surface wherever possible opportunities for synergy and integration with the other data infrastructure networks. Again, the magic of T3 has been identifying the codependencies in this space. So no one network can go it alone, but we do need to segment the work out a little bit to get the right subject matter expertise focused on that particular community to address interoperability issues specific to them, whether it's around skills, standards, records, or jobs data, but understanding that for this ecosystem to function like we've imagined, for this digital transformation to be accelerated and to be completed, it's going to require all of these different community groups not only solving their own challenges, but working collaboratively across their domains to solve these challenges together. So that's what we're going to try to get right. We think we've done a decent job in our previous phase with many work groups that we were juggling, but now we're trying to consolidate in ways that make the most sense based upon lessons learned and how work has converged over the last couple of years, and to try this new model out with formal charters and governance. And we're going to see just how far we get in 9 months, and we're going to learn a lot, we're going to share a lot, and we're going to get better. So thank you to all for joining. For those of you who've joined, thank you. And we hope if you've not yet taken the opportunity, you do so now, to join T3 and to opt into one or more of those networks. And then our last ask of you is to not stop there, but invite others. As Josh had previously mentioned, you know, the T3 network is only as strong as its membership. So we need to make sure that we are always getting more voices to the table, more perspectives, more participation to reach more populations. We need an all hands deck on approach to make sure we're bringing the right kind of leadership and the right voices to the conversation to make sure T3 is truly inclusive of not only all of the learners and workers that we seek to have impact with, but also all the various organizations and stakeholders who have a role to play in this emerging data and technology infrastructure. So we've done a good job last year of expanding to over 500 organizations and over 1,000 professionals. But now we need to keep growing. Again, it's not just a numbers game. It's about getting the right stakeholders in each of the data infrastructure networks to get the work done. But we know that there's a lot of work to be done to make sure we have the right stakeholders and the right voices there. So this is our start, but we could use your help as members of T3 to help bring those additional voices and representatives to the table. So please do share the word after you sign up. Send out a note to 2 or 3 of your friends or colleagues or organizations that might not have had the opportunity to hear or learn from these presentations of late, and get them connected to us so we can make sure they have all the information they need to make a decision as to whether or not T3 is a good fit for them. So please do help us spread the word. Again, this is not our network. We're happy to be caretakers and shepherds where appropriate and when asked to, but this is really about giving you all tools, platform, and structure to get your work done, to advance your missions and agenda, and to better engage your peers in structured and proactive decision making in furtherance of those 3 goals. Together, working as a village, we do think it is possible to help facilitate this digital transformation that will not in name only, but will truly make all learning count, skills the new currency, and will empower learners and workers with their data. It's the long game, but like T3 has always focused on, you know, we are use case driven. This isn't science fiction. We are focusing on the practical and the doable. The technology is here, but how we choose to work together to deploy it, to make it interoperable, and to what ends it's in service of, those are our choices as a community. So here we are coming together to do this as a village, and we couldn't be more appreciative of your support and participation. Again, this is about you, not us, and we're happy to provide you this platform in this initiative to the extent it could become a vehicle for you to accomplish all the great work that your respective organizations are in pursuit of. And let us help us help you tell your story. We know you're all doing such incredible work, and like I mentioned in the chat earlier, there is just so much going on in all of these domains. But even just look what's happening within the context of records and all of just the frenetic activity and leadership. There is just so much going on there, and if T3 can provide just a little bit of value in helping corral a lot of those actors and stakeholders, all the research and the pilots, to say, what do we need to be learning together as a community? How do we continue to surface challenges and best practices? And then let's figure out in what way, shape, or form can T3 maybe help tackle a couple of these challenges where it's a community-wide challenge. It's not specific to any 1 or 2 partners. So help us figure this out with you. We're in it for the long haul, and we're really excited about these next 9 months to try these new charters and data infrastructure networks out. So thank you. And I haven't been monitoring the chat, but Josh, has anything new come up as far as kind of questions or comments?
No, it just seems like people really like the collaboration and the future opportunities.
Right. Well, there's going to be a lot more to come. So please do speak up in the chat or raise your hand if you have something to say. Otherwise, I was hoping just to kind of share our final slide with you so you have our contact information, where to learn more. Again, the T3 Network Hub is the place to be to join and learn more, but there's a lot of other ways that you can connect more directly with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation team. If you just want to have a conversation about T3 or have a more of a one-on-one engagement to find out how T3 can be a fit for you, or how to navigate the various infrastructure networks, or how to just learn about the work that has preceded this point. So please do reach out. It's all about the community, and we want to hear from you, and we want and we need your leadership and engagement if we're going to be successful in achieving those goals. I just wanted to thank the team, all of our project leads, for the work that they have done the past 4 to 6 weeks. And even prior to that, pulling these data infrastructure networks together. We're really excited to see what leadership emerges in each of them. As far as chairs go, the chamber team is going to be putting our heads down to build out the advisory board, and we'll have more to share later this year. And you will be seeing some more details about the full network-wide meeting that we will be planning for later in the fall. So lots of work ahead, but we think this is the right structure to get a healthy start. Again, I need to thank all those who have funded this initiative, because without them, this would have just been an idea on paper. But thanks to the early support and investment from Lumina Foundation, which got this all started, and then all the various funders, of which there are many, and they're all recognized on the Chamber's website, from Gates Foundation to Google.org to Schmidt Futures, JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft Philanthropies, Walmart. And I specifically want to call Walmart and give special thanks to Walmart, because they are the ones who really provided the funding to do the T3 Network of Networks work group last year that planned for this launch, and they are really underwriting this launch in the next 9 months of activity. So we're deeply appreciative of their ongoing support and leadership, and the big bet they're making on this emerging data infrastructure. And we look forward to continued collaboration with them and others who come to the table here for T3 to support this work and to support all of your efforts. So anything from the team, anything missed? Hearing none and not seeing anything else in the chat, we're happy to give you back a little bit more time, and the work begins. So stay tuned for updates from the Chamber on T3 broadly, but also if you've signed up, expect to receive something from your network, from each of the network leads soon. They'll be setting the cadence for how those groups will be meeting, how they'll operate, and what's top of the list in terms of priorities to be tackled. But never hesitate to help us set those priorities. We're really trying to build these community groups to support you all. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being part of T3. If you're new to T3, welcome. We are deeply appreciative of you joining this family. And yeah, you'll be hearing from us soon. But thank you, everyone. And we wish you a pleasant afternoon.